So hello, my lovely people. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Chairs Chat. I am your Lee County Republican Chairman, Mercedes Price Harry, and my Vice Chairman, Grant Fichter, will be joining us hopefully on our next podcast. But today I am so excited to introduce you all to a friend of mine who I hope you will be equally impressed with, and his name is Charles Nodine. Hello, Charles.
How are you doing? I appreciate you having me on this. I really do.
Man, I'm excited to have you. So one of the things that we're wanting to do is, not only highlight our members in the executive committee, but also highlight local leaders, elected officials, movers, shakers. And I have a passion for young Republicans. I was the former young Republican president for like 3 or 4 years back in the Tea Party days. And I just love to support the young Republicans. And I love to gobble up young Republicans because you're an anomaly, right? There's not too many young Republicans. We often talk about how, when you're young, if you have a heart, you're a liberal, and if you are older and you have a brain, you're a Republican. And once you have children and get married and you end up in your late 30s and 40s, you really do. There is something to be said about wisdom. And being able to, look back. And so I think that what happens for the Republican Party is we are the party of common sense. We are the party of entrepreneurial, the entrepreneurial spirit. And we're the whole pull them up by your bootstraps. And when you're young, you're more like, it's all about trying to find your way. And so you end up sort of falling into these more emotional camps. So let's start by finding out a little bit about you. Talk to me about your upbringing. Where were you born? How many siblings do you have? What was it like growing up in your home? And bring us up until, I don't know, let's just say like college or 18, 19.
No, absolutely. So upbringing wise, so right now I'm 23 years old.
That's the thing. Charles is only 23. That's why he's here. That's why I'm interviewing him.
I grew a beard, so I look a little bit.
Would it take you like 2 years?
It did, and it's still not.
Do you spray in the gaps?
I do. Well, no, they don't know that.
I'm totally kidding.
But why? Maybe I should start doing that. But as far as my upbringing goes, so bit of an anomaly with that too. Anybody I speak to about my upbringing, when you see young Republicans, a lot of time, they're firm, masculine men. It's great. Yeah. You love to see it. Republicans, they come from every background. I grew up in a very Democratic household, very Democratic. My mom was. I used to wake up every day in elementary school and she'd be watching the news. Obama's on the television. She'd hype him up. It should have followed down. It should have, but I didn't really like what I heard. I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know national politics. It's funny. The first time I ever identified myself as a Republican, I remember this very clearly, 4th grade playground.
Oh.
It's hilarious. Listen, it's not going to be some in-depth, the economy. I knew it needed to be saved.
Yeah.
It was a buddy of mine asked me.
Laffer curve.
Yeah, man. A buddy of mine asked me red or blue. Well, I like the color red. So I said red. And he goes, well, you're a Republican. I was like, I don't know what that means, but yes, I am. And
interesting.
It stuck. And it's kind of a foolish story, but it stuck. It was a mentality going into middle school. And as I got to 8th grade, I ran for class president. And somebody else was running for president at the time when I was in 8th grade, Donald Trump in 2016.
Oh my God, you were in 8th grade in 2016.
That's amazing.
So the funniest joke I tell my mom, she was like, it would back to school shopping, let's get you something. So I said, I want a jacket. You know what jacket I want? A Hillary Clinton jacket. So I got my mom's credit card. I went online and I bought a Make America Great Again jacket.
No.
My mom was not happy. She was not happy.
Gosh.
So I got it in the mail. I showed it to her. She hated it. She didn't want me to wear it. So I snuck it in my backpack the next day. It was election day for the class president. So I wore the jacket to school. I wrote on multiple whiteboards without teachers' permission, we're going to make Punta Gorda Middle School great again. I really rolled with it. Now I lost badly.
Did you really?
Yeah, I lost terribly. I got like 12 votes out of like 500.
Well, it might have been the PG.
Yeah, it just didn't make sense.
They're like, that boy can't even spell.
I wrote it out, and I had to write it kind of tiny on the bottom right of whiteboards and whatnot. But it really carried. I remember when Trump was elected. So Trump finally got elected when I was in 9th grade. And I remember waking up in the morning. High school starts pretty early. I fell asleep.
I don't know why they do that. That makes no sense.
Doesn't do a lot of justice for the kids. Myself.
Well, you're not biologically at that age made to wake up at 5 a.m. to get on a bus
Absolutely
and
not.
start school at 7. It's so backward. But anyways,
I would love to show my transcripts for that. If you see my first 3 periods of like 9th through 12th grade,
You're just like,
C's, D's,
yeah,
and then
of
it really
course.
spikes later on in the day. So
it's common sense.
It is. And I was
whatever.
a terrible sleeper. And I played football. So, we were up late, adrenaline was rushing. I wouldn't get to bed till pretty late.
I'm
then I'm
sure.
up at 5 a.m. It wasn't good. I slept a lot in the first few periods. So, but that's a whole nother
Other
point.
story.
A point to be made. It does need to.
Yeah.
School needs to start a little bit later. But
So Trump 2017.
Yep. So when I was in 9th grade, I remember I had gotten to bed pretty early that night. That was an anomaly night. I remember waking up in the morning, bowl of cereal on the table. I looked up Trump, and then I saw his face glowing on Google. He got elected. I went to school. Oh, and nobody loved me that day because I was just going around, let's go Trump. I was cheering,
Yeah, it was tough to be pro-Trump in 2016.
Especially in and this is something that's shocking, because you don't hear a lot of mindsets of the kids that were in high school. Not a lot of high schoolers like Trump either.
Yeah.
And in middle school is even worse.
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't like Trump. I cried on election day.
Really?
Yeah, I cried. That's embarrassing to say because I've never done, and I'm not I'm a crier. I cry when the sun shines. But I was so, I'm a Ron Pauler, right? So I was like all about Rand Paul in that particular election. And I just was so disappointed. I mean, in retrospect, everything's different now, right? I mean, obviously. But at the time, I was coming off of the Tea Party, which was 2010, 11, 12, 13. And I thought to myself, I was literally blood, sweat, and tears during that time. And so for me to now have to choose Trump or Clinton, which Clinton was not even an option, it like broke my heart. Like, what am I doing? I'm like killing myself with kids, toting around kids, working business and running businesses and like killing myself with politics. And this is who I have to vote for?
Well, and at the time, he was prior to this, a lifelong Democrat.
Yeah.
And I know that was your issue.
Well, and the media was so hell-bent on making him look like a buffoon. And then very shortly after he won, when I saw the visceral response that people had toward him and the way that all of the Me Too women came out and everyone was marching by the millions, and then it was just ridiculous. Yeah. And then it was like, okay, now I'm going to go for the underdog just because you guys are stupid. You're so annoying and hyperbolic and ugh. Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's, being a kid and being pro-Trump, I can only imagine what that was like.
And by the way, that mindset is so important too, because everybody was coming from different spheres looking at Trump in different ways. And we're of course happy to see that he beat Hillary Clinton, but it was tough for some people to make that jump for him. For me, I didn't vote. I was in middle school.
Yeah.
But I was different in that fashion, and it was the first time I ever got called a racist. Me, my brother's African American. Adopted
I didn't
brother.
know that.
So it's kind of hard to call my family a racist.
Yeah.
But it was the first time I ever got called a racist was in 8th grade because I wore that "Make America Great Again" hoodie.
Wow. Yeah.
I got shoved down in the bathroom, wearing that hoodie. But that's okay, because that really carried forward into my adult years where, regardless of what you believe in, you should stand by it firmly. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green Party, doesn't matter. Believe in it.
Yeah.
And, and that's something I always believe in is the dinner room conversations where, nowadays you can't have a conversation at your dinner room.
Yeah.
Now you got to go back to it.
Right.
So, I own it. And I'll always own my conservative background. And I think everybody should own their own backgrounds and be willing to have conversations. But of course, 8th and 9th grade, we're all emotional.
Yes.
There's not a big willingness to have those conversations.
And no interest.
No
when
interest.
you're that age, you don't care about politics. You're just your perspective is totally different.
I
because
did.
You don't have the mental and fortitude for it.
It's hilarious. I did on my class ring. I on 2 sides of it, you can get the 2 most important things.
Oh my gosh!
I put a football and an American flag.
Oh, I like
Those
it.
were the 2 most important things to me.
Nothing wrong with that.
I was a very, very odd kid. I actually enjoyed politics, and my mom she didn't like what I believed in, but she's around now. She's a Republican now. She's a registered Republican now. She comes out, she votes. Now, sometimes I got to remind her to vote, but that's your generic low propensity voter.
Yes, right. Which is the average
voter
person, the normies. I call them the normies. You know, they have a passion for the country and they have a passion for voting, but they're not neck deep like we are. You know, we're the anomaly. And that's something I try to remind the executive committee members is that we are the anomaly. So while you may be hyperventilating about what's happening at a local council meeting or just in politics in general, you have to understand when to strike. Because if you're constantly striking, then you're just annoying and no one's listening to you. And that's the problem that so many really incredibly smart people have in this area is that they don't know when to strike. They're just always striking. So when you're an ankle biter, eventually people just kick you off, you know? But anyways, I'm getting on a soapbox.
I actually think that's a terrific point. I just want to piggyback off that real quick is we are the anomaly, all of us. Anybody that's involved in politics, the issue is we see politics every day. We know it. We know everybody.
It's our entire feed.
So I always tell candidates and I tell voters that are super involved, remember a time when you weren't involved.
Yeah.
What did you see? I can point to a time freshly 18, I had missed the Republican primary because I didn't know it was happening. I get to the general election.
Whereas that's like our life.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? The primary, it's August 18th, 2026, you know?
Exactly. But when I was 18, I missed it because I didn't know what was going on. And I didn't know any of the candidates. And if I did vote, I would have played hopscotch in the ballot because I had no idea who was up for election. I was a registered Republican, so I would have been on the Republican ballot. But chances are I would have made some wrong decisions because I didn't know. And moving on to the general election, I still didn't know. I knew, well, I was voting for Trump. It was the first candidate I ever proudly casted my vote for was Donald Trump on the 2020 general election ballot. But I think back on that now, and nowadays I know exactly who to vote for. But I always tell them, you have to put yourself in the position of a low propensity voter.
Yes.
You don't know anything.
You don't.
That's how you know how to connect with them.
Gosh,
what do they want to hear?
Great advice.
What I think is terrific, and it's something a lot of people don't do because we're in the mentality, we're the high propensity voters. We know it all. We know these candidates' upbringings, downfalls, what they believe in, their values.
Who they took a picture with.
Exactly. But the low propensity voter doesn't know.
No, and that's realistically, and maybe I'm being ridiculous, that's like 98% of people in my sphere. I feel like, and I'm a political nerd, right? So like most of the people in my sphere are actually political, so I should be fair. Not in my sphere, but like I think of like my sister, I think of my best friend Carrie, I think of my best friend Olivia. Like they are Republicans and they vote Republican, but they, you know, like this whole single members district thing. I am constantly talking to my normie friends about single members district, and like it's not even on their radar. Whereas we have people who are freaking out and are literally like working overtime with legislators to squash it. And it's just wild to me because most of the people don't. It's just not on their radar. So you're right. You've got to put yourself in the mindset of the normie if you're going to make an impact. Yep. Otherwise, you're just word vomiting and it's too much and you turn people off.
No, exactly. And like I said, always think back if you're a high propensity voter and you want to help a friend make the right decision or you want to explain something to them, think back to a time when you didn't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, and if you came onto yourself with that much knowledge that intensely, well, you'd be scared away.
Yeah.
Or you wouldn't comprehend.
Right.
So it's our greatest asset as consumers and high propensity voters is we can remember the time when we didn't know much.
Yeah, that's true.
Of course,
we're on the other side when they haven't hit that other side.
Exactly. And coming from my background professionally, consulting business and professionally, I remind that to the businesses I work with and the candidates that I work with is remember a time when you didn't know anything.
Yeah, precisely.
And that's how you know how to connect
I
with
love
voters.
it. Great. So this is a great opportunity to transition into that because that's why I wanted to bring you on. I didn't want to bring you on to like promote you and your business or anything. I just love and am so impressed that you're 23 and you run political campaigns. So without, talking about the company specifically, talk to us about like how you got involved and what you do from a day-to-day perspective, because a lot of people don't understand there is a business with running elections. Now, the elections are supposed to be, candidates and elections are the job of the executive committee, but unfortunately as a GOP, we've sort of ceded that to the consultant class. And a very good dear friend of mine is a consultant, and as are you. Yep. I have respect for people that are consultants because you're almost always really smart people. Yep. Do I like the way some of you guys run campaigns? No. But that doesn't mean I don't dislike you as a person. But nonetheless, there is an entire business. And so as the GOP, we've ceded the candidates in elections to the consultant class because we haven't been doing the things that we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys filled that vacuum. Talk to me a little bit about how you got involved in that and you know, what that looks like and what you guys do as political consultants and what it's like to be 23 and be doing it.
It's definitely strange. I'll say that. So that actually helps me transition from being in high school as a Republican. As I turned 18, actually closer to the end of my 17 years, turning 18 in February of 2020, I was invited to a bus tour for Trump. Who was I to say no to that? I was actually working at a coffee shop, a Trump shop. We sold Trump gear.
Oh, cool.
So I was
Is that the one on 41
Yep,
in Punta
Bean.
Gorda?
I worked at the Bean.
Okay.
Yes.
Shout out to the owner of that place. He was very inviting of me, and he taught me a lot.
Wow.
This is as I transitioned from being just, you know, and like I said, remember when you were a low propensity voter, you didn't know everything about policy, but you liked your candidates. I liked Trump, but I really couldn't defend him. It was a tough period, but the people around me, my peers, who I owe a lot of my success to, they filled me in. They filled in the gaps. They taught me things I needed to know. So I went to this bus tour, and I was asked to intern on the Trump campaign. Heck yes.
Yeah.
I was next day out, I was knocking doors.
Wow.
And I moved my way up. I finished up the Trump campaign as an intern, met a lot of great people, and that had believed in me as a young person. Like I said, I owe a lot of this to them. And I was invited to go to Georgia for the NRSC runoff. That was Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue versus
That's right. Yeah.
Warnock and Ossoff. And I knocked a lot of doors there in a different state. It was definitely interesting. Rural Georgia knocking doors for me. It was strange.
Did you go to Statesboro?
I was in Chatham County, Savannah.
Okay,
but
Savannah.
I knocked in the surrounding counties of Chatham. There's
Okay.
a county me and my friends always talk about, Jessup.
Yep.
Jessup. That's near Winder.
Yeah, y'all know Jessup, right?
Oh, yeah.
The career of a political door knocker. 2 guns pulled on me in Jessup.
Oh no, I believe it.
Though, you know what I
That's
told
Jessup.
both of them? I said, it looks like you're a fan of the Second Amendment. So am I.
Nice.
You can't be afraid at doors. You gotta. Yeah, every voter deserves to be talked to, but
Yes.
every voter has a different mindset of somebody walking up their front yard. Some of them had long driveways, but no voter left behind.
Yeah.
So I had done that. Came back to Florida, done more interning. For the young kids getting into politics, they'll know you only work on the on years. You know, when there's an election, on the off year, you gotta kind of hustle. I was washing cars 2 years ago at a rental company.
Yep.
And I enjoyed it, but I wanted to work in politics. So I realized, and this is where things get strange. I realized, well, if I want to work on campaigns, sometimes I have to find my own. So in January of 2021, I decided to found my own company because, I wanted to work on the off years. I didn't want to clean cars. I wanted to work in politics. So I founded my own company, and I reached out to every candidate I could get my hands on and said, I will run your race for free.
Wow.
It's because I wanted to do it. This was my passion.
Yeah, right.
Now, I turned away a lot of candidates that didn't share the same values and mentality,
you should.
morals, and ethics. But I ran my first few races. My first race I ever ran was a county commissioner in Charlotte County, and we almost won. We almost won. We were outspent 6-7 to 1.
Wow.
But I had brought, as a young consultant, the mentality of digital.
Yes.
The digital advertising. It kind of shakes things up with the brick and mortar consultants. And I made a name for myself. Now, I was on my own company dime. I wasn't making any money. My mom was helping me. This is when she had transitioned to being a Republican. She believed in me. I really appreciate her. She actually used an entire tax refund once to help me promote my business. I owe it to her. She really helped me step up as a consultant.
Wow.
So with that money, I drove
impressive.
to DC and I started pitching people. I'm a consultant. I want to do this. This is what I believe in. They were welcoming, but they weren't welcoming at the same time. You know, it's strange. By that time, I was a 20-year-old consultant up in Washington, D.C., telling them I can do this, guys. And I had a few people that believed in me. And they started referring campaigns my way. I started running them. And things were looking up. And then I got the famous call do you want to go work for Vake Ramaswamy? Now, this was in...
Yeah, that's kind of how we met.
Yep. So that was in March of 2023.
Amazing.
Now, Vivek had filed in February, and I remember meeting with a lot of my candidates before going to Iowa. I needed that. I was going to continue running the races, but I needed that level up in a sense, working on a presidential campaign, especially one that was as intimate as the Ramaswamy campaign. And in March, now nobody could pronounce his name right. Nobody really knew who this guy was.
I knew. The first time I heard him, I was like, I'm on the Ramaswamy train. Yep. And then I got on the Trump train at the end. But
we called it the Ramaswamy tsunami.
Yeah.
I like that.
You should have heard me at the...
he was a force.
Oh, he was unstoppable. Wait till I get into him.
Incredible.
He's still,
He is. Yeah. You're right. He still is. Yeah. Love him.
Brilliant guy. There's not a question asked
there's
him
not
that he
a
didn't
question.
know.
And the wealth of knowledge, the history, and I'm telling you, I saw him on, I don't know what it was. I think it was like a podcast, and I was just hooked. The first, and then every single podcast I saw him on after that, I just was more and more and more impressed. Yeah. He's just such a great candidate. He's just such a light for the future of the Republican Party. Him, JD, Byron Donalds, we're so unbelievably prepared for the future.
Oh yeah, the roster that's brewing of younger,
smart.
It's always so weird to call some Republican candidates younger because I'm 23.
Right.
They're in their 30s,
and you're talking about like 30 and 40-year-olds. Yeah.
But brilliant, like you said, Byron Donalds, Vake Ramaswamy, JD Vance. You see a lot of the younger congressional candidates throughout the country.
Yes.
They're brilliant, and they're carrying. It's the ethics and morals they walk with is what I respect so much about them. Vivek is unwavering. And when I joined the Vivek campaign, there were a lot of truths. We called them the 10 truths.
Yes,
a lot of truths he was speaking that people weren't on board with.
Yeah.
But I used to always tell crowds of people whenever I would travel the state of Iowa, Vivek is the type of guy that's going to say something where when you first hear it, you go, I don't know how I feel about that. But over the weeks, you really let it settle. You think about it, and you start to realize it's the truth. It's the truth. We had 10 truths. An open border is no border. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind.
Yes.
Fossil fuels, unlocking fossil fuels is how you fuel the country.
Boom.
They were hard truths that some people just didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
But they had to be said.
Right.
And they were the truth. And now we know they're the truth. So I was proud to get on that campaign. And what
was your position on that campaign?
I started off as a regional field director. That was actually a level up for me at the time.
And that was when we met.
That was when
you
we
were
met.
In this area.
Yep.
I reached out to you and I was like, I'm in.
I remember that. Let me just say this for the record. Anybody that jumped on Vivek very early and said, I like him, I'm in. I had so much respect for that. When you had reached out to me and you said that, it was when he wasn't really known.
Yeah.
It was
nobody caught on for like 9 months. I was like, what's going on here, guys?
It's the people with the intangibles like yours, where before seeing a whole lot of them, he's got the energy and the passion, he's got the knowledge, the will, the mindset, the grit. You pick up on good candidates early. I really respected that. I remember
same with Byron Donalds.
Exactly. Mercedes is the one.
Just not Trump. I was a little slow on the Trump train, but
that's okay.
A lot of people
perfect. No, you can't.
Yeah. But that was 2016 too, and it only took me like 2 months after he was inaugurated in 2017 that I was like, okay, I'm full force Trump. Even he got mad at me because I wouldn't take the Trump sign out of the front yard in 2020. I wouldn't take it out. He was like, you got to get rid of it. I think we were like 4 months after the election.
Yeah,
5 months.
Come on now.
He's like, get rid of it. I was going to climb the telephone pole and like staple it in. Anyway, sorry.
I'm even more embarrassed. I had a Trump sign up. Hurricane Ian took it down for me.
Oh man.
So I had it up even longer.
I'm
than
impressed.
You. But no, I remember sitting down with people when I was right before I was going to Iowa. I had to settle my campaigns before I'd gone up there. Then I remember sitting down with a group of people, and I remember saying, "I'm going to work for Vivek Ramaswamy." They're like, "Who?"
Yeah.
Who? I was like, well, trust me, this guy's going to be big. No, go up there, get a paycheck. No, we're going to make this guy big. We're going to win the state of Iowa. I do not work campaigns to lose. I do not work campaigns for anything else to win. That's why you do it. That's why you invest your own personal time and effort into a campaign. I was going to Iowa to win.
Yeah.
And
how long were you in Iowa?
I was up there for about 10 months.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
I got up there around maybe a little less. About 10 months. I got up there April 4th, and I got home January 22nd.
So you were pulling those like 16-hour days with him.
Oh my God.
Where you guys,
longer than that.
Vivek was the only one in history to visit every county two or three times. Okay,
Twice.
right.
It was
That's
called
incredible.
Called the Grassley, the 99 county tour, but he did it twice. It was hilarious. So I started off as an RFD. I moved up to RPD. I covered the 4th Congressional District. That was one of the more religious districts. Vivek is a Hindu.
Yes.
So it was kind of tough to get out there. Me,
Yes.
myself, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
and I'm passionate about that. And so I was connecting with a lot of voters out there that were like, oh, I can't vote for somebody that is
Yeah,
Hindu.
I got that a lot too when
Yep.
I was on the Vivek train. Yeah.
But the thing about Vivek, when you got to know him, you realize he embodied
all of the Christian
the
principles, loves
sometimes
his family.
sometimes more than Christians themselves.
Yeah.
It was kind of hard.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of
I
a hard
mean-
truth. He embodied it.
Yeah.
Family values, his beliefs, his grit.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of people on board out in Western Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, one of the few counties we came in 2nd place in was in my district in Iowa. So I was very proud of that. We were able to push him up. We came in 4th place. It was unfortunate, but the amount of work he put in.
It was impressive.
It was.
I was following his live feeds, and I just was blown away.
I remember. So if you remember from the campaign, I used to speak for Vivek before he'd come up on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
I was 21 on that campaign, and I remember the first time I had to do it. Our state chair was sick, and we had kind of said, "Oh, well, somebody needs to introduce Vivek." And I was terrified of public speaking at the time. I was shaking in a pizza ranch in a rural county. I was like, "Oh, I can't do this, guys." And I remember I did it. And I felt so fulfilled after doing it. I spoke for him for the rest of the campaign.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
Nice.
Biggest crowd I ever spoke in front of was probably about 2,000 out in Cedar Rapids.
Wow.
And you're not lying. We pulled 16-hour days, 17-hour days. We'd wake up at 4 a.m. to get across the state. We'd start our first event at 9. We'd finish our last event at 10, 11, drive back to Des Moines to sleep for the night. 2 hours of sleep, we're up. That's the grit. That's the grit that Vivek Ramaswamy had. And the staff, we believed on that hard. We were willing to wake up too.
Well, and you guys had a young staff. Like,
We did.
wasn't his campaign was very non-traditional for a Republican in that so many of you were young. I mean, he just captured the hearts and minds of young people, which is the other reason why I just loved him. Like, just that energy. You just couldn't beat it.
We used to do free speech and free drinks. It was a special events we do at college campuses where we'd give everybody one free drink, and the college kids would pour in there. And I remember this one event we had done at Iowa State and Ames. We had a group of kids come in as the founding fathers, dressed up as the founding fathers.
Cool.
And we were really embodying the founding father spirit, the constitutional spirit.
Yeah.
And the young kids were they were fired up. And, having somebody like Vivek, somebody that you can relate to, a younger dude, fired up, smart.
Yeah.
The young kids were flocking to him, and I was overjoyed about it. I was blessed for these young kids to see exactly what I saw in them. It was a message over the span. We didn't have a long time in Iowa. We had 9 months.
Yeah.
We had 9 months against the incumbent president,
Right.
a governor, 2 governors,
Yeah. America's governor.
America's
At the
governor,
time, yeah.
exactly. And we just worked.
Yeah.
We just worked. We weren't. It was a very morally and ethically grounded campaign too. We weren't in it to attack people. We were creating our own identity.
That is so true. He was the only one he was the first one that shot up his hand during the debates when they were talking about defending Trump. He was like, NFG guys, like, I'm behind Trump. You don't like it? Tough. But that's how he is on all of his positions. If you don't like it, okay. Like, watching him go up against people and then dismantling their arguments respectfully and at least acknowledging, like, okay, so we just agree to disagree. Let's move on and just not be like some lunatic about it.
No,
you know?
exactly.
So talk to us. Okay, so you finish the Vivek campaign. He doesn't make it.
Yep.
And you come back home. And so talk to us a little bit about what you've been doing now that you're home, and then any advice you have for any future candidates.
No, of course. So when I had gotten home, I was invited to join a national firm. I was very excited about it. I was finally able to step away from my own firm and join more of a national presence, really elevate my career. And I was very honored. I had a lot of candidates in 2024 want to work with me. It's because I brought a different mindset to it. Consulting, a lot of times when you look at it at a 30,000-foot overview, it's not a lot of campaign management. It's vendor management. It's strategic messaging. I believed in it differently. I believed that your consultant should also be your campaign manager, heavily involved. That's how you win. It's by putting in the long hours and giving each campaign the love and respect it gets. I had a lot of candidates that believed in me in multiple different states: Montana, South Carolina, California, Iowa, states I hadn't even stepped foot in before. But they believed in me, and I did my time to research their districts. We won a lot of those.
Yeah.
So I was a winning consultant coming out of 2024. I ran a lot of local races, learned a lot of things. And that leads us to now, we got a lot more races coming up here in the future. Those I won't get into.
Yeah.
But when it comes to young kids getting involved in politics,
yes.
we have a lot of them, actually. I'm actually running a 21-year-old for Iowa House.
Wow.
Very excited for that. I'm actually
Wait, can they run for House at 25? 21? I think you got to be 25.
This is Iowa.
The State House.
Yeah, State House.
Got it.
So, yeah, not Congress.
Sorry, I was thinking,
I'm
I'm like, you can't be 21.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I said Iowa House, so I could see. But I'll tell
Well,
you.
you said Iowa House. Sorry. Yeah.
No,
okay.
well, I sometimes I used to say Florida House and think Congress. But I'll say that the young kids, I'm looking for young kids to run for office. We need those different mentalities. No knock to older candidates, but young kids, they just got skin in the game.
Yeah.
They have their entire lives ahead of them. Some of them don't have kids, but they will.
Yeah.
And they want a country, a state, cities, doesn't matter, whatever they're running for, that benefit their kids,
Yes.
that are still around for their kids.
Well, and I think it's in large part because they see what people who have not represented us have done to us. When your mom and your dad, think about someone even your age, going through the 2007 mortgage crisis, right? And then COVID. I mean, what are our leaders doing to our country when you're paying $8 for eggs and $4 for gas and the average home price is $400,000? When we got out of college, we were killing it with really great jobs. He was part of the tech boom, which got squashed in the early 2000s. So we did have a hard time. And then after that, the mortgage crisis kind of knocked us back as well. But it was always a little easier to bounce back, and we were lucky in that our home at the time was only $170,000. So my 3-2 pool home in Cape Coral was only $170,000. We weren't even looking for anything above $185 when we graduated college. Now you graduate college, and you're lucky if you can get a condo for $250.
It's ridiculous. And like you said, like the longevity of the country. I'm 23, so imagine my friends are young. My friends are all my age. I'm blessed myself. I bought my first home a few months ago out in Babcock Ranch.
Yay, good for you.
I'm blessed, but it took a lot of hard work, and it took, it took a lot of grit. But I've got a lot of young kids with the same thing. Yeah. Hard work and grit. They're working their butts off.
But they can't keep up.
They want to move out. They want to start their own lives, but they can't. They can't afford it. They're living with their parents. And they realize this is not normal and this is not okay. No,
it's not a free market thing. It's not to some degree the supply and demand is totally applicable based on where we live, right? Yep. We're in Florida. The whole freaking country was flocking here in, between 2020 and 2022, and they still kind of were until about a year ago. Now the market's saturated, But yeah, I mean, you see that this is not normal.
No, and see, that's where you're going to have, in my opinion, a lot of young kids start running for office because of their longer-term mentalities. I unfortunately think sometimes there's a little bit of a short-term mentality with some of our leaders.
For sure.
Where it's, how do I embrace my own legacy in this short period of time?
Yes.
But what are the long-term effects? A lot of young kids, and pointing right back to Vake Ramaswamy, he was 39 when he was running for president. He's probably 40 right now. He's got a lot of more time of life left ahead of him. And he's got 2 kids, 2 young kids.
Very young.
They need a country to strive in as well.
Exactly.
So you're going to have a lot of younger guys, younger women getting involved in politics, regardless of the party, with longer term mindsets. Yeah. And that's what we need. And that's where, coming from my point of view as a younger consultant, when I'm advising the candidates and we're looking at policy and we're looking at focuses, we're looking longer term. We're looking not how do we save us in a year and then everything goes downhill in 5 years. We're looking what are the long-term 5-year plans that save us for the next 40?
Yes.
How do we
no more Band-Aids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do we empower our younger kids to achieve the American dream? The American dream is almost out of grasp for young kids. To be able to afford college on their own without being buried in loans. How do they buy their first home?
Or to have a family where your wife can stay at home and take care of children. That's the foundation for the the falling apart of our entire structure. I feel like is mom's always working. I mean, I'm no different. You know, I'm not home for my kids the way that now in my older age I look back and realize I should be. You know, and so if you can't have a wife and a family because she's always got to be working too, like you don't want that.
It's unsustainable. And see, that's where we're not looking long term.
Yeah.
Vivek called something out very specifically, and it hits home for me. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. A man and a woman in a household leading their kids, a woman at home providing the feminine edge to her daughters and her sons, and a man showing what it's like to be a man.
A leader,
Yep.
yes.
And like you said, when women aren't able to stay at home as much as they should be, leading the house, in a sense, being the homemaker, setting the standard,
the base, the foundation.
That's short-term thinking, you know,
Yes.
because we're our economy, they like you said, they can't afford to both be at home or one be able to work.
Yeah.
It's falling apart. And when we start looking longer term, we start, you know, making sure our women can stay at home a little bit more. That's where you put your kids in the greatest focus. I was, like I said, I was raised in a single mother house. I didn't have a father. I never knew my father. And, you know, even though I achieved all I've achieved today, you know, I think I could have.
You could have gone the wrong way
Yep.
easily.
Easily. Unfortunately, yes. And you see it a lot with the younger kids that grow up in those type of households. So it's looking at longer term effects, culture, economy. How do we put families in the best chances of succeeding? When I look at my peers, my friends that are working their butts off for their own dreams, how do we put them in their best chance of succeeding? We've got to start thinking longer term.
Yeah.
That's the biggest advice piece. Younger kids getting involved in politics, go and chase those younger candidates, go and chase those older candidates with longer term mindsets, get involved, work your butts off for them, knock doors, talk to your friends, think like a low propensity voter.
Yes.
Do the
Best
things.
advice of the chat today.
I think it's just golden. Be different. That actually be the biggest piece of advice I can give. I'm different. Everybody looks at me and they go, "Wow, you're doing great," but I'm different.
Yeah.
Be different and be proud of it. I'm absolutely proud of being different. You
Right.
know, with my mentality when I was in middle school, getting pushed around for wearing that "Make America Great Again" hoodie. I'm proud of it.
Yeah,
couldn't
good
be
for
more
you.
proud of younger me. So
I love
be
it.
different.
Yeah.
Be different.
Awesome. Well, I want to wrap it up, but I also want to point out that, you know, one of the things I always tell young people is get involved in the game. Get involved in the game because you never know where you're going to end up in 10 or 15 years. You never know where they're going to end up. I was involved 15 years ago, and the number of people that I knew back then who were just, you know, joining things the way that I was joining things, the things that they're doing now, the places that they're at, the influence that they have is incredible.
Yep.
You just never know where people are going to end up. So get involved, and you know, whether it's through a Young Republicans or like one of our members, Fakel Ultimo, has a Next Up Republican club where their goal is more like mentoring young people to get some skin in the game. But definitely get involved, be different, and
Get
thank
involved.
you, Charles.
That's-
Thanks for coming in today.
Absolutely, get involved. That's the best. That's even better piece of advice. Get involved.
Yes,
I love
because
that.
you never know, and plus it's just great networking, great connections, and always have cards. You never know who you run into.
Yeah, get the leg up, network, and like you said, you don't understand the impact a group of young kids can have getting involved in a campaign or getting involved in
100%.
your local Republican Party. 5 kids knocking on a neighborhood. That changes elections.
100%.
That gets people elected.
Yep.
So get involved. Go to your local GOPs.
Yeah.
Get involved with their clubs. Get involved with the Young Republicans, as Mercedes said, and just be different.
That's exactly
be
right.
different.
Well, thank you so much, Charles Nodine, someone that I admire greatly, and I'm so glad that he was able to come in today and talk with us. And if you're interested in getting involved, I hope that you will. Please visit us at www.leegop.org. Again, that's leegop.org, where you can become a member, a precinct committee man or woman, and help educate your voting precinct, or you can just volunteer. We need all boots on the ground, all ages welcome. And thanks again, Charles. We appreciate you. And that wraps up this episode of the Chairs Chat. Seacrest out.